Okay, I feel like my job is always a mystery to people. And granted, I do 10 million different things. So, in all fairness, that makes sense. But more and more people have been talking about trend forecasting. And as someone who actually is a trend forecaster and isn't just making it up on TikTok, I feel like we should talk about it because it feels like this behind the scenes job that no one really knows what goes into it. Like, are you just sitting there making it up? Sometimes, not always, usually not. But it has this like ethos of mystery. So let's break it down. Let's dive into it. So let's start out with like, what does a trend forecaster actually do? Where can you work? So as you guys know, I've spent my career on both the editorial sides and the retail sides of the industry. I've worked as a consultant, I've been freelance, so that's working with brands directly or working with trend firms like you guys might know WGSN or Doniger, and they hire out consultants to either do research for them or put decks together and strategize and work through clients, all stuff like that. Those are options. You can also work at a retailer or a brand specifically. So there's usually not many of these people. It might quite literally be one person, or it could be a whole team. And what they do is they technically, I would say they oversee the buyers, but you're kind of that link between buyers and marketing and more of this outward vision of a retailer. So it's helping keep everybody on the same page. So I wouldn't say you're not sitting there telling the buyers what to do, but you're making them a shopping list in a sense and helping guide them through that buying process. So, let's say hot pink blows up and 10 million people aren't buying hot pink. And then all of a sudden you're walking into the store and that is the only thing that you can possibly buy. So someone titled like a fashion director is overseeing that sort of thing. And then in turn, you want to be working with marketing, right? So let's say that you did buy 10 million hot pink dresses and you're like, okay, what are we going to do with all of these? We need to make sure that they actually get sold. We just invested so much money into this. So, what you're going to be doing there is then creating different content strategies, whether that be through email marketing, through photo shoots, commercials, making sure that those big investments and what your team is really excited about is actually being shown to the public so people go buy it. So that's one way to do it. Working within the firms, you could be working on the content side. So that means doing a ton of research. And there are so many different ways to do research. I'll like dive into that in a second. So you could be doing research and then also you could be on the consulting side. So working with clients. So if you were a brand or a retailer, you could be a client of, let's say, WGSN and you would go to them. You could feed through, other big bank of content, but you could also be typically you're working with a strategist too to help guide you through all of that and help dictate what makes sense for your brand in particular. So you could work through a firm or you can also work through yourself, which is something that I've done for years and it is so fun to get to work with like different indie luxury labels and helping them just navigate through all the craziness. So those are some ways that that comes out. And then also, of course, there's so many great editors who are amazing trend analysts and are really diving into the zeitgeist of culture and relating fashion with tangible things that you can buy or how is it stemming from pop culture and telling those stories to help guide people and help them understand that okay, yeah, like we're all obsessed with ballet flats again, but why is that? Where does it stem from? What's the greater story here? Is there a really amazing designer that's driving this trend and we should all be excited about and want to go support? Or is there a movie coming out that now we're all obsessed with the color hot pink? Whatever that might be, there's different ways to look at it. So, I'll tell you a little bit about my process, and it's varied at every place I've worked. So, there is no streamlined way of doing this. And it really depends on what your output is, too. Because if you're a retailer or if you're even a stylist, like there's going to be different ways that you trend forecast. But I'll tell you about the few things that I look at. So, first and foremost, you're going to look at runway. Like, case in point, that used to be the very old school way. You were only looking at runway and then you were looking over at Europe and seeing what they were doing. And those were about the only things that people looked at back in the day, which is crazy. So when I say you would sort through hundreds of thousands of runway images, I am not kidding. And so you would literally sit there and tag them, whether it was like red, mini dress, lace, or you would drop them into different folders. So we're keeping all of our mini dresses in X folder so we can go back and refer to it. And this is such a manual process. It takes so damn long. Like I don't want to know how many hours of my life have been spent to doing that. It is probably insane. So that's kind of this first notion of understanding runway. Whether you're looking at other things, we're still, having a more forward approach to trend forecasting. That is just like going to be your foundation. Case in point. And I think the argument there from someone who doesn't quite understand the industry, they're like, okay, but that's already a trend. Yes, but when you've also been doing it for so long, you're noticing these slight nuances that happen in what makes a trend important. So let's say, you know, I- whoever, let's say Tom Ford is trying out a new trend that feels so different for his usual, like, sexy, sleek aesthetic. You're noting that, like, that's really important. If somebody who that isn't their natural aesthetic is jumping on that trend, that's probably pretty interesting and you should be taking note of that. So you really need to understand the designers and who are major players and how that ethos starts to shift and how that makes it just mean something. And also looking back at their collections too, right? So let's say you remember what happened in fall winter. You saw a shade of yellow that then in spring summer really grew even more. So you can guess there that those sales are probably resonating. People took interest to them, whether they were starting to collect data, people were clicking on it in line or online, or the press was talking about it, people were posting in it. So it might start to show that, like, hey, this color really resonates, and you'll see the increases start to happen. So that's a great way too that data can get involved. So I've also worked with different data firms as well. So this can be tracking many, many different things, but this is kind of a new layer to trend forecasting that's been added in. So a lot of it stems from, let's say, Google search. So you'll start to know, like, okay, more people are searching for the color pink. Why is that? And so it more so is validating some of those visions that you are probably already having. And also, with that being said, it might let you know that something is going viral. I mean, everybody's FYPs on TikTok are so different nowadays that it's almost like there's so much happening. It kind of has a twofold. It does make it impactful, but it also slightly makes it less impactful because there's so much going on. But a trend that you might not have been aware of might be really helpful for the company that you're working at and you didn't know. So getting these different sparks of, like, oh, this is trending, that's really interesting. Or let's say a certain hack is trending and you make a product that is used for that sort of hack. You're going to want to maximize on that. That is so important. So someone who's a fashion director or a trend analyst would be keeping that in mind and wanting to help maximize, move forward, whether that be through design or even through content marketing. That's super helpful. But I also want to take it back, like, outside of fashion. The absolute key here is understanding the cultural zeitgeist. So you need to be understanding what's going on and kind of making a toolkit of when these trends are coming into play and when they actually make sense. So I've already been telling you about the color hot pink. So I want to tell you about how I forecasted that before that even blew up. So coming out of COVID, we're obviously so excited. Your social calendars are building up again. You're going to these fun social events. There's an absolute excitement in the air. So we start to see trends like the naked dress take off, really sartorial trends like oversized bows, gemstone earrings, glittered, handbags, all these things that felt really fun. And so this, of course, needs to be maximized with a lot of different color. So during this time too, we're starting to think of, we called them rave shades. So I was leaning into, it was lime, electric purple, cerulean blue, and hot pink. So these were colors that I was like, okay, as society begins to start having fun again, is traveling more, going out again, they're going to want to utilize a palette like this. There's also a ton of conversations and happening around, feminism and bringing in female empowerment and being bold and owning your sexuality. So, with that, the color pink and hot pink specifically really just embodies that ethos of being loud and proud and like so excited to, show up, whether that be through a hot pink power suit or a sheer mini dress that you're like, fuck yeah, I look amazing. Let's go. So, as that continued to go, we started to hear about the Barbie movie. So, even before this movie started to come out, the publicity that this movie was doing, they let all the imagery be leaking, this looking back to 2022. So, people were getting excited about this color so early, even before the movie was even near releasing. And when I tell you I was going into market, every single brand, whether they played into the hot color pink usually or not, was driving home with hot pink. And it was so funny at this time. I was in-house at a retailer, and we went back and we did, so you do these things called style outs. So everyone is presenting what they're buying, and the amount of hot pink, it was like sickening. All of us were like, okay, everyone go back. We cannot be having this much hot pink in our assortment. Like, yes, we believe in it. Yes, we think it's going to sell well, but this is just crazy. Like, no one had seen anything like it. So as this continues to go, it becomes more important, it grows. So we're really believing and betting in the color hot pink. With that being said, this also causes fatigue. But you still have that ethos in the air of celebrating, wanting to be bold, and owning all of, those amazing things. So looking at the data, this is all actually really fascinating. So a company that I work with, you can see the timeline of searches and when this is peaking and when it's not. So this all really started to peak in fall, winter, right around holiday, and then we saw an absolute drop off come spring, which is so funny because typically you would think, wow, pink is such a spring color. We should be diving into this right now. This should be resonating so well. When actually it peaked at the holiday season, and then people were so freaking sick of it from seeing it absolutely everywhere. We had a 10 million and one articles about Barbie core. People were talking about it all over TikTok. So it was kind of coming to an end. But now that the Barbie movie is coming out soon, we're talking about it, the trailer's out, the hot pink searches are up on the rise again. So it's really interesting to see how this correlates. But this is a lot that it sparks a lot of conversations within the retail space of, is it good to go viral? Is it bad? Is it going to cause too much fatigue? And do you actually want that much press, or do you want to nicely sit in the middle here? Anyway, with all of that being said, that's how you kind of build this toolkit. And then looking forward, we still love these bright colors. We had a lot of fun with pink. We're still having fun with pink within 2023. But looking ahead to the fall runways, we saw bright cherry red be coming back. We're also seeing this like bright cerulean blue that I mentioned previously is now coming in this rebuttal to hot pink. So it's still bright, it's still bold, it's still really fun. But now that we're getting sick of hot pink, the Barbie core or the Barbie movies coming out, like the peak is really, really done now. We have these replacements and we're ready for them. So that is like a cycle of a trend. But so looking at, the culture as a whole, that is really what I think differentiates what you're being able to spot as someone who's like, oh, I shop at Zara and I noticed that the girlies are talking about this online. I see it in the trendy stores. Like, okay, great. That's amazing. But you do need to take it a step further. And I can be diving into this in the whole different ways that retailers test trends, all of that good stuff. But that's definitely, I think, the biggest differentiator is understanding how this relates with culture and how people are interacting with fashion. Because also, I mean, this is kind of another example too of Y2K. Y2K absolutely blew up. But when you think about these trends, they're not the most wearable or inclusive. So the Miu Miu mini skirt went absolutely viral too, blew up. And is it comfortable? No. Can many people wear it? Yes, anybody can wear anything. But Not everyone is walking past a rack in a store and is like, "Oh my god, that tiny little skirt, let me go grab that and bring that to the fitting room." Like, it's not an inviting trend. So when you think about things like from that perspective, some of the most daring trends you're not going to want to hold on to for years and years and years. But you find what am I wearing right now? This like that intimacy boat neck like knit top. That is so wearable. Boat necks have been around for decades and decades. It's a very flattering cut. Ribbed knit is really comfortable. You can dress that up or down. That's something you could wear to the office. You could also pair it with a mini skirt and look really cute with a pair of heels and go to date night. So something like that, that's a trend you're going to want to believe in. That's a trend that you're also going to feel more comfortable spending money on as a consumer because you know that you're actually going to wear it. So that is like how we navigate the trend cycle. I know that was probably so much information, but wanted to just break that down a little bit. And also, I think a fun thing too is where are people getting inspiration? We obviously have what's served to us on TikTok. We can look at retailers. We can, scroll the endless e commerce sites that are available to us. But something for me that I think is just the most helpful, it's kind of like a inspiration hack. I would say following the right people on Instagram. Don't just let it get served to you, but be smart and be strategic about who you're following. So, I love to follow people who are actually working in the industry and are maybe getting sneak peeks that not everybody is getting. So, I love to follow the fashion directors at luxury stores, different retailers. So, like Lisa Inkin, she's at Vogue now, but she was at Moda for years. Laura Santo Domingo, she founded Moda Operandi. So freaking cool. Rupal Patel from Saks. So they're going to these market appointments and seeing what's happening seasons ahead and kind of giving you a little insight into what you're about to see. So I think those are really cool follows. So many of my peers within the editorial industry are doing the same thing, showing you what's really exciting for the season, and then also posting their work, right? So maybe we get inundated with content. There's so much on our news feeds, and people who are sharing exciting work, or you find a writer that you really love and making sure that you don't miss their articles, so important. I will like plug my friends. They're so incredible. I'll like link some people that you guys can follow in the bottom. But that's a really great strategy just to make sure you're getting well informed content at the end of the day, and helps you weed through the noise to make sure you're getting quality over quantity. And I think honestly, those girls, like they're so ingrained within fashion that their outfits are really cool. They're creative, but they're also giving you some of the best pieces. Like they have probably seen so many white t shirts that the one that they're picking to wear is probably the best one. And it feels like you can actually trust those sources instead of, having buyer's remorse from buying something that just totally seems not the best. It looked amazing online, and then all of a sudden it's absolutely see through and you regret buying that. So, following those key strategic people has been so incredibly helpful for me. And not just people in your city, too, but looking at people from abroad. I follow this really cool influencer. Her name is Inka Williams. She's in Bali, and I love seeing what her and her friends are wearing out to dinner. And she's like a gorgeous model. But it's such a fun follow to see people in these different lifestyles. And then it gives you inspiration too of like, hey, when I'm in Bali, like I know she went here, or I know she wore this, and that seemed like a really cool vibe to her to dinner. Or how can I translate this really cool trend into New York City? So I think those are, just really cool ways to approach your following, because I get it. Social media is so overwhelming. Following trends is incredibly overwhelming. So that's really my approach to with trends. I try to not make a TikTok that is full of a new trend video, which I know that the algorithm then punishes you for. But my job professionally on social, behind the scenes within consulting, is helping people navigate what's actually worth your time so you don't feel bad about having to keep up with these trends that actually aren't important just for the sake of clicks, or because you feel like you should because XYZ someone is wearing it. But helping you find the things that you really love, what's worth your dollars, and makes you feel good about fashion at the end of the day and gets you excited.